All right, Karina baby, today is the 17th of September. You are 5 years, 5 months, and 7 days old today. Mama can't believe it. All right, so our next book from A Year Full of Stories for the 17th is The Shrub Squash. Mr. Chippy loved gardening. One day while he was weeding his onions, he noticed a squash plant growing on the compost heap. I don't remember planting that, thought Mr. Crispy. Oh, he had one that was just growing on its own. Love those ones. But from then on, he watered the plant every day. The squash grew larger and bigger and fatter until one day Mrs. Chippy looked out her cottage window and gasped, "Look, that squash is enormous." And so it was. The squash would make a good house, said Mr. Crispy. Our cottage is a bit small. Mr. Crispy put a door and some windows on the giant vegetable, and the Crispies moved right in. But the neighbors started to complain. "Your squash spoils our view," they said. "Move it." Now the Crispies had grown very fond of their squash house, and the thought of losing it made them sad. So Mr. Crispy attached 4 big wheels to the squash, put an engine on the front, and made a steering wheel. When everything was ready, Mr. Crispy started up the engine, and Mrs. Crispy chopped through the stalk. "Off we go!" they cried. The Crispies were speeding along the highway to the seaside. When they got there, Mr. Crispy looked out to sea. "We could travel around the world," he said. "There and back again," agreed Mrs. Crispy. Mr. Crispy quickly made a sail and turned the squash into a boat. Mrs. Crispy pushed the squash into the boat. Mrs. Crispy pushed it down the beach and into the sea. The squash floated perfectly. "What a superb squash," said the Crispies, as they sailed away. Look at that. They moved into their vegetable and they made it so that they were content with everything that they were doing. They even went to sea. Isn't that just perfect? That was the stories of Mr. and Mrs. Crispy. All right, so the next story in our World Best Fairy Tales is The Boy Who Kept a Secret. Once upon a time, there lived a poor widow who had one son. At first sight, you would not have thought that he was different from 1,000 other little boys. Then you noticed that by his side hung a scrapboard. And as the boy grew bigger, the scrapboard was growing bigger too. The sword, which belonged in the scrapboard, was found sticking out in the ground in the garden. And every day the boy pulled it up to see if it would go into the scrapboard. But though the scrapboard was plainly becoming larger, it would be some time before the two fitted together. However, there came a day finally when the sword slipped into the scrapboard quite easily. The child was so delighted he could hardly believe his eyes. But please, thought he, was he determined not to tell anyone about it? Particularly not his mother, who never could keep anything from her neighbors. Still, in spite of his resolutions, he could not hide altogether that something had happened. When he went in to breakfast later, his mother asked him what was the matter. "Oh, Mother, I had such a nice dream last night," he said. But I could not tell it to anybody. You can tell it to me, she answered. No, mother, I can't tell it to anybody, returned the boy, till it comes true. I want to know what it was, and know it I will, she cried. I will beat you till you tell me. Oh my. There's the photograph that goes along with it. But it was no use. Neither words nor blows would get the secret out of the boy. When she stopped beating him, the child ran into the garden and knelt weeping beside his sword. It was working around and around all by itself, and anyone except the boy trying to catch hold of it would have been badly cut. But the moment he stretched out his hand and stopped turning in the sand and slid quickly into the scaffold, for a long time the child sat sobbing, and the noise was heard by the king as he was driving by. Go and see who is crying, he said to one of his servants. The servant returned, saying, Your Majesty, our young boy is sobbing because his mother has beaten him. Bring him to me at once, commanded the matriarch, and tell him that the king who sends for him, tell him that the king has never cried in all of his life and cannot bear anyone else to do so. On receiving this message, the boy dried his tears and went with the servant to the royal carriage. Will you be my son? Asked the king. Yes, if my mother will let me, answered the boy. And the king sent his servant to the mother and told her that if she gave her boy to him, he would live in the palace and marry the king's prettiest daughter as soon as he was a man. The widow's anger now turned to joy, and she kissed the king's hand. I hope you will be more obedient to his majesty than you were to me, said she to the boy, shrank from her half frightened. She said, and the boy shrank from her half frightened. But when she had gone back to her cottage, he asked the king if he might fetch something that he had left in the garden. Given the permission, he pulled up his sword, which he slid into the scabbard. Then he climbed into the coach and was driven away. After they had gone some distance, the king said, Why were you crying so bitterly in the garden when we came along? Because my mother had been beating me, replied the boy. And why did she do that? Asked the king. Because I would not tell her my dream. And why wouldn't you tell that to her? Because I will never tell it to anyone till it comes true, answered the boy. And won't you tell me either? Asked the king in surprise. No, not even you, your majesty. Oh, I am sure you will when you get home, said the king, smiling. And he talked to him about other things till they came to the palace. I have brought you such a nice present, he said to his daughters, and as the boy was very charming, they were delighted to see him and gave him all their best toys. You must not spoil him, observed the king one day, when he had been watching the children playing together. He has a secret which he won't tell to anyone. He will tell me, answered the eldest princess, but the boy only shook his head. He will tell me, said the second girl. No, not I, replied the boy. He will tell me, cried the youngest, who was the prettiest too. I will tell nobody till it comes true, said the boy, as he had said before, and I will beat anyone who asks me. And I will beat anybody who asks me. The king was very sorry when he had heard this. He loved the boy dearly, but he thought it would never do to keep anyone near him who would not do as he was bidden. So he commanded his servants to take him away and to not let him enter the palace until he had come to his right senses. The sword clanked loudly as the boy was led off, but the child said nothing, though he was very unhappy at being treated so when he had done nothing wrong. However, the servants was very kind to him, and their children brought him fruit and all sorts of nice things. Soon he grew cheerful again and lived among them for many years, till he reached his 17th birthday. Meanwhile, the two eldest princesses had become women and had married powerful kings who ruled over great countries across the sea. The youngest one was also old enough to be married, but she was very particular and turned up her nose at every young prince who sought her hand. One day she was sitting in the palace, feeling rather bored and lonely, and suddenly she began to wonder what the servants were doing and whether it was not more amusing down in their quarters. The king was at his council and the queen was ill in bed, so there was no one to stop the princess, and she hastily ran across the gardens to the houses where the servants lived. Outside one of them she noticed a youth who was handsomer than any prince she had ever seen, and in a moment she knew him to be the little boy she had once played with. "Tell me your secret and I will marry you," she said to him. But the boy only gave her the beating he had promised her long ago. Oh my. When she asked him the same question. The girl was very angry, besides being hurt, and ran home to complain to her father. "If he had 1,000 lives, I would take them all," swore the king. That very day, a gallows was built outside the town. The people crowded around to see the execution of the young man who had dared to beat the king's daughter. The prisoner, his hands tied behind his back, was brought to the scene by the hangman. His sentence was being read by the judge, an deadly sentence, when the sword clanked against his side. Suddenly a great noise was heard, and the garden coach, with the white flag waving from the window, reveled over the stone. It stopped underneath the gallows, and from it stepped the king of the Magrides, the ruler of Hungary. He begged that the life of the boy might be spared. "Sir, he has beaten my daughter, who mercilessly asked him to tell her his secret. I cannot pardon that," answered the princess's father. "Give him to me. I'm sure he will tell me the secret. If not, I have a daughter who is like the morning star, and he is sure to tell it to her." The sword clinked again, and the king said angrily, "Well, if you want him so much, you can have him. Only never let him see my face again, and he might be a sign to the hangman." And he made a sign to the hangman. The cords were removed from the young man's wrists, and he took his seat in the garden coach beside the king of the Magrides, Magyars, Magrides. And the coachman whipped up his horses, and they set out for Buda. The king talked very pleasantly for a few miles, and when he thought that his new companion was quite at ease with him, he asked him what was the secret which he had brought him into such trouble. "That I cannot tell you," answered the youth, "until the day it comes true." "You will tell my daughter, I am sure," said the king, smiling. "I will tell nobody," replied the youth, and as he spoke the sword clanked loudly. The king said not another word, but he was confident that his daughter's beauty would get the secret out of him. The journey to Buda was long, and it was several days before they arrived there. The beautiful princess happened to be picking roses in the garden when her father's coach drove up. "Oh, what a handsome youth! Have you brought him from fairyland?" she asked, when they all stood upon the marble steps in front of the castle. "I have brought him from the gallows," answered the king, rather vexed at his daughter's words. As never before has he consented to give attention to any man. "I don't care where you brought him from," said the spoiled girl. "I shall marry him and nobody else." and we will live together till we die." "You may tell another tale," replied the king. "When you ask him his secret, after all, he is no better than a servant." "That is nothing to me," said the princess, "for I love him. He will tell his secret to me, and will always have a place in my heart. But the king shook his head and gave orders that the lad was to be lodged in the summer house. One day, about a week later, the princess put on her finest dress and went to pay him a visit. She looked so beautiful that at the sight of her, the book he held dropped from his hand, and he stood up speechless with wonder. "Tell me," she said coaxingly, "what is the wonderful secret? Just whisper it in my ear, and I will give you a kiss." "My angel," he answered, "but wise, and ask no questions. If you wish to get safely back to your father's palace, I have kept my secret all these years and do not mean to give it up now." However, the girl would not listen and went on pressing him. Till at last he slapped her face so hard that her nose bled. She shrieked with pain and rage and ran screaming back to the palace, where her father was waiting to hear if she had succeeded. "I will starve him to death, the son of a dragon," cried he, when he saw her streaming with blood. Then he ordered all the masons and bricklayers in the town to come before him. "Build me a tower as fast as you can," he said, "and see that there is room inside for a stool and a small table, and for nothing else." The men set to work, and in 2 hours the tower was built. Then they started for the palace to inform the king that his orders had been followed. On the way, they met the princess, who began to talk to one of the masons. When the rest were out of hearing, she asked if he could manage to make a hole in the tower which nobody could see, large enough for a bottle of wine and food to pass through. "To be sure I can," said the mason, turning back, and in a few minutes the hole was bored. At sunset, a large crowd assembled to watch the youth led to the tower, and after his misdeeds had been proclaimed, he was solemnly walled up. But every morning the princess passed food to him through the hole. Every third day the king sent his sanctuary to climb up the tower on the ladder to look down through the little window to see if the boy was dead. But the sanctuary always came back with a report that he was fat and rosy. "There is some magic about this," said the king. This state of affairs lasted a long time, till one day a messenger arrived from the Sultan of Turkey, bearing a letter for the king, and also three cans. "My master bids me say," said the message, bowing low, "that if you cannot tell him which of these 3 cans grow nearest the root, which is the middle, and which is the top, he will declare war against you." The king was very much frustrated when he heard this, and thought he took the cans and examined them closely. He could not see a difference between one or the other. He looked so sad that his daughter noticed it and inquired the reason. "Alas, my daughter," he answered, "how can I help being sad? The Sultan has sent me 3 cans and says that if I cannot tell which of them grows near the root, which is the middle, and which is the top, he will make war upon me. And you know that his army is far greater than mine." "Oh, do not despair, my father," she said. We shall be sure to find out the answer." And she quickly ran away to the tower and told the youth what had occurred. "Go to bed as usual," he replied, "and when you wake, tell your father that you have dreamed that the cans must be placed in warm water. After a little while, one of them will sink to the bottom, that one of which grows nearest to the roots, one of which near sinks nor comes to the surface is the cane that is cut from the middle, and the one that floats is cut from the top." The next morning the princess told her father of her dream, and on her answer he cut tiny notches in each of the cans which he took them out of the water, so he might make no mistake when he handed them back to the messenger. The Sultan, who could not imagine how the king had found out the answer to the puzzle, did not declare war against Buddha. The following year the Sultan again wanted to pick a quarrel with the king of the Magyars, so he sent another messenger, this one bearing a letter and 3 fowls. The letter required the king to say which of the animals was born in the middle, which in the morning, which at noon, and which in the evening. If an answer was not ready in 3 days, war would be declared at once. The king's heart sank when he read the letter. He could not expect his daughter to be lucky enough to dream rightly a second time. To add to his troubles, a plague which was raging through the country had killed off many of the soldiers, and his army was even weaker than before. At this thought his face became so gloomy that his daughter noticed and inquired what was the matter. "I have had another letter from the Sultan," replied the king, "and he says that if I cannot tell him which of these 3 fowls he has sent was born in the morning, which at noon, and which in the evening, he will declare war at once." "Oh, don't be downcast," she said. "Something is sure to happen." And she ran down to the tower to consult the youth. "Go home, idol of my heart, and when night comes, pretend to scream out in your sleep, so your father hears you. Then tell him that you have dreamed he was just being carried off by the Turks, because he cannot answer the question about the fowls." When the lad came, he had walled in the tower, ran up and told them which had been born in the morning, which at noon, and which in the evening. So the princess did exactly as the youth had bidden her. No sooner had she spoken than the king ordered the tower to be pulled down and the prisoner brought before him. "I did not think that you could have lived so long without food," said he, "and as you have had plenty of time to repent your wicked conduct, I will grant you pardon, on condition that you help me solve a terrible problem. Read this letter from the Sultan. You see that if I fail to answer his question about the fowls, a dreadful war will be a result." The youth took the letter and read it through. "Yes, I can help you," he replied, "but first you must bring me 3 things, all exactly alike. Into one you must put oats, into another wheat, and into the third barley. The fowl which eats the oats is the one which was fouled in the morning. The fowl which eats the wheat is the one that was fouled at noon, and the fowl that eats the barley, which is the one that was fouled at night." The king followed the youth's directions, and making the fowls sent them back to Turkey. And marking the fowls sent them back to Turkey. And there was no war that year. Now the Sultan became very angry that both of his plots to get possession of Hungary had been such total failures. So he sent for his aunt, who was a witch, to consult her about what he should do next. "It is not the king who has answered your questions," observed the aunt, when he had told his story. "He is far too stupid ever to have done that. The person who has solved the puzzles is the son of a poor woman. If he lives, he will become king of Hungary. Therefore, if you want the crown yourself, you must get him here and kill him." After the conversation, another letter was written to the king of Hungary, saying that if the youth in the palace was not sent to Turkey within 3 days, a large army would cross the border. The king's heart was sorrowful as he read, because he was grateful to the lad for what he had done to help him. The boy only laughed, bade the king fear nothing, and to search the town incessantly for 2 youths who looked exactly alike. Then he would paint himself a mask that would make him a replica of them, and the sword at his side clinked loudly. After a long search, twin brothers were found, so identical that even their own mother could not tell the difference between them. The youth painted a mask that was a precise copy of their faces, and after he had put it on, no one would have known one boy from the other 2. They set out for the Sultan's palace, and as soon as they reached it, they were taken straight into his presence. He made a sign for them to come near. They all bowed low in greeting. He asked them about their journey. They answered his questions all together and in the same words. If one sat down to supper, the other sat down at the same instant. When one got up, the others got up too, as if there had been one body instead of 3. The Sultan could not detect any difference between them, and told his aunt that he could not be so cruel as to kill all 3 of them. "Well, you will see a difference tomorrow," replied the witch, "for one will have a cut on his sleeve. That is the youth you must kill." And 1 hour before midnight, when the witch was invisible, she glided into the room where the 3 lads were sleeping in the same bed. She took out a pair of scissors and cut a small piece out of the boy's coat sleeve, and then crept silently from the room. But in the morning the youth saw the slit and marked the sleeves of his other 2 comrades in the same way, and all 3 went down to breakfast with the Sultan. The old witch was standing in the window and pretended not to see them, but witches have eyes in the back of their heads, and she knew at once that not 1 sleeve but 3 were cut, and they were alike as before. After breakfast, the Sultan, who was getting tired of the whole affair and wanted to be alone to invent some other plan, told them they might return home. So bound together they went. The princess welcomed the boy back joyfully, but the poor youth was not allowed to rest long in peace, for one day another letter arrived from the Sultan, saying that he had discovered that the youth man was a very dangerous person, and he must be sent to Turkey at once. The girl bursted into tears when the boy told her what was in the letter, which her father had bade her carry to him. "Do not weep, love of my heart," said the boy. "All will be well. I will start at sunrise tomorrow." So next morning at sunrise the youth set forth, and in a few days he reached the Sultan's palace. The old witch was waiting for him at the gate and whispered as he passed, "This is the last time you will ever enter it." But the sword clinked, and the lad did not even look at her. As he crossed the threshold, 15 armed Turks barred his way, with the Sultan in the lead. Instantly the sword darted forth and cut off the heads of everyone but the Sultan, and then went quietly back into its scaffold. The witch, who was looking on, saw that as long as the youth had possession of the sword, her schemes would be in vain. She tried to steal the sword that night, but it jumped out of its scabbard and sliced off her nose, which was made of iron. And in the morning, when the Sultan brought a great army to capture the lad and take away his sword, they were all cut into pieces. while the boy remained without a scratch. Meanwhile, the princess was in despair because the boy slipped by and the young man did not return. The princess was in despair because the days slipped by and the young man did not return. She never rested until her father let her lead some troops against the sultan. Dressed in uniform, she rode proudly before them. But they had just left the town where they met the lad and his sword. When he told them what he had done, they shouted for joy and carried him back in triumph to the palace. There the king declared that the youth had shown himself worthy to become his son-in-law, and that he should marry the princess and succeed to the throne at once. Because he himself was getting old and the cares of government were becoming too much for him, but the young man said he must first go to see his mother. And the king sent him in state with a troop of soldiers and his bodyguard. The old woman was quite frightened at the army which drew up before her little house. She was still more surprised when a handsome young man, whom she did not know, dismounted and kissed her hand, saying, "Now, dear mother, you shall hear my secret at last. I dreamed that I should become king of Hungary, and my dream has come true. When I was a child and you begged me to tell you, I had to keep silent, or the Magpie King would have killed me. And if you had not beaten me, nothing would have happened that has happened, and I should not know, and I should now be king of Hungary." He has become the king of Hungary. He is the boy with the secret. Alright, Karina baby, let's do Boker Tov, good morning. We sing Boker Tov, we thank you for this life. We sing Boker Tov each morning. This way we know it will be alright. My father, he's up on the wall over here. I miss him so very much. Your grandfather, my father, look at this. I want you to see this. Because if I was there, I'd be showing you photos. Look, this is my papa, right? That's my papa with my mama, right there. That's my papa and my mama. My papa took very good care of us. He was a very good father. He wasn't a good husband. But I mean, that happens. But he was a very good father. You know, he just wasn't a good husband. I miss him so much. You have a teddy bear at the house that I want back. His name is Dottie. My papa gave him to me when I was 6. He came home telling me that he was sick and that when he goes up to heaven, I could hug the teddy bear. I want that teddy bear back. I miss you, honey, and I love you so much. I love you so much, and I miss you. But why is it important to keep our roots? It doesn't matter where we are or what we're doing. We keep our roots, right? We keep connected to God. We keep our roots. Men wear yarmulkes because they are to become aware. They have something on their head at all points in times to have their connection with God, right? Women are supposed to be more spiritual, and we're supposed to already have that kind of connection, so we don't wear anything kind of special like that. You know, men also have taluses, and they wear their talus, and they wear their yarmulke, and like, they do special things in order to keep them more connected with God. Why is it important to keep our roots? Why is it important to be, it's important to be proud to be where you're from, right? We're proud to be Jewish because it's so many people throughout so many years that stood up and was like, no, I'm not standing for this, and we're going to do something better, right? Rosh Hashanah is coming up. Tomorrow is the first day of it. It's the high holy holiday, and we're going to, everyone that's Jewish is going to sit down and they're going to write out their plans to become better people, all their transgressions that they had throughout the year. They're going to go out to a forest and find a water source, and they're going to rip up the transgressions and have them flow into the lake and let everything go, and they're going to keep their paperwork for everything that they can improve upon, right? That is the high holy holidays. Certain people don't eat and don't wear shoes and don't go anywhere and just focus on what they're supposed to be doing. Certain people are allowed to eat. Certain women, older men, older women are supposed to eat during the holiday. If you have a child that you're nursing, anything like that, you're supposed to eat. If you're pregnant, you're supposed to eat. Stuff like that. So, like, in a family way. But, like, why do we celebrate our holidays? Every single holiday for our culture is a war that we won, something that we went through, or just a remembrance of we never want this to happen ever again. Like the Holocaust Remembrance Day is we never want this to ever happen ever again. And we want to remember all of our people that we lost. So why do we celebrate? We celebrate in order to celebrate our culture and our people, right? It's the part of Behold a Tov, right? We are linked throughout every single generation that we are in, and we just want to keep our culture going. I know a lot of people are reformed, a lot of people are kind of like, you know, like we're not kosher really anymore and stuff like that, but it's okay. But yeah, I wish I was there with you because I would love to sit down with you and just know what you're feeling and know what you're going through. Every single day I used to ask you, what's the favorite part of your day that you had today? How are you feeling today? What part didn't you like today? What would you like to improve upon tomorrow? And I miss doing that with you. I miss asking you every morning, what did you dream about? You know, I just miss you. I can't wait to see you. It's gonna be soon. It can't be too much longer. Mama needs to be able to see you eventually, so it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. In the end, everything will be okay. It's just not the end yet. I just miss you. Alright, let's do Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth and carry me home. Well, I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming forth to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming forth and carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth and carry me home. Well, sometimes I'm up and sometimes I'm down, coming forth to carry me home. But still I feel my soul is heavenly bound, coming forth and carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth and carry me home. Now if you get there before I do, coming forth to carry me home. Tell all my friends I'll be coming there too, coming forth and carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth and carry me home. I'll be coming home, coming home, coming home to you, coming forth to carry me home. You know my word is good, you know my word is true, coming forth and carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth and carry me home. You know that I love you, coming forth to carry me home. You know my word is good, you know my word is true, coming forth and carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth and carry me home. You know, the strings that attach us from our present to our past is really the reason why I love the culture that we are set in. Because my father was very proud to be Jewish. He was very proud, and he did a lot of things to make it super clear that that's exactly what he was proud to be. Like, we would get ham sometimes, and we would go down to the neighbor's dogs, and we would throw it over the fence, and my father would say, these dogs aren't kosher, but our dog is. And we'd throw the ham to the neighbor's Rotties over the fence. They were beautiful dogs. That was when we were down in Scranton. And we would walk down this alleyway that was just a bunch of rocks, and then there's this fence there, and we would just throw it over, and we'd watch these dogs eat so happily. You know, it was just amazing. And then I was older, and your father was like, well, why don't you eat that? And I'm like, because of this and that. And he's like, no, you gotta look it up. So I looked up pork, and I looked up ham, and I realized it's just another white meat, and it's something I hadn't eaten. And I realized, like, why our culture didn't eat it back in the day, but why it's so dangerous to eat a raw pig that you're cooking on your own. But, like, the ham in the stores is pre-cooked. And we're supposed to be cooking up a pig in a couple weeks in October, and I'm on the fence about it. Like, I don't know if I'm going to eat it or not. We're doing a pig roast, and I'm kind of stuck in the middle because I'm like, well, it's kind of against my culture to eat raw pork like that, that's cooked that way. Like, it's against my culture to eat any pig, but, like, I don't know. I'm kind of, like, back and forth with it. I don't know if I'd let you eat it if you were here. So, like, I'm, like, back and forth with it. So, I don't know. Like, I'm not kosher anymore. Like, your father stopped that when I was, like, 24. So, I don't know, baby. I just love you. I just miss you. I just can't wait to see you. All I'm doing is try to keep busy in order to be able to make my days go, so that this way I'll be able to see you soon, and it won't feel like it's forever. It's been too long. It's been way too long, honey. It hurts my heart. Alright, let's do Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to feel, and grace my fears relieved. How precious was that grace thus far, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, snarls, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Karina, baby, let's do Lila Tove. Lila Tove, and good night to you. Lila Tove, may your dreams come true. We sing Lila Tove, may Israel protect you throughout the night until we reach the morning light. You know, 0 to 4 are your window periods for learning absolutely everything and anything. You still have a good foundation. I know you do. I did Your Baby Can Read and Your Baby Can Discover with you. We did signing time. We did everything, fundamentally speaking, that we were supposed to do. Unfortunately, it got cut short, which is heavy on my heart. 0 to 4 are the most important years for young children to have the brain growth and development to have that attention 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 0 to 7 are really the times where your baby shouldn't be away from you, right? Like, that's when mama and babies have great times together, 0 through 7, and then you start to develop more, and you gain more friends, and you go out more places, and you do more things. Mama's heart is so heavy that I am missing this precious time with you. You are 5 years, 5 months, and 7 days old today, baby. My time with you was cut short for some of the things I wanted to do with you. But we will get back into step, and we will be fine. We're going to be fine. We just have to get there. Baby mama loves you. I love you more than anything in this entire world. I love you. And I miss you. And I can't wait to see you. Mama has a doll coming in for you. I can't wait to have you play with it and hold it. I can't wait to see you. You know, I actually have this doll too. This is one of your old dolls that was in the car, but I want to fill her up with water and empty out the old water that's in her. That's why she's not on the bed. She doesn't have any clothes either, but we'll work on it. We'll work on it. So Mama's getting you a new doll as well. I have so much stuff for you. It's unbelievable. I have games for you. I have toys for you. I have inside and outside toys for you. I have so much stuff. You have a soccer ball. You have everything. You used to have a balance bike. I know you have a new bike at the house. Oh my gosh. I miss you. Every single time I go out, it's bad. I need to get you something. I want to get you something. It's, you know, I just love you. I just love you. And I don't know if gifts is your love language, but I always try to hit up all the love languages. There's words of affection and aspiration. There is quality time together. There's physical touch. There's gifts and acts of service. Those are your 5 love languages. You have a little bit of all of them. Mama always tries to fill all of them. I just miss you, honey. I wish I could be right there by your side right here, right now. But soon enough. Soon enough. Soon enough, baby. Alright, Karina, baby. Mama always says at the end of our videos, pretty much, I always say, Papa always used to say, Mama's his sun, Papa's my moon, and you are most definitely a rainbow baby. We will find some way to work together on this. Papa and Mama will, because we made you, and we both love you. I love you, sweetheart, more than anything. I love you and I miss you.